As we pick up season 8, we have a big two-parter. We have some big themes that we're tackling. The unrest down at the docks, the dock workers sort of trying to live life down there on their own terms. Brackenreid is left with his life hanging in the balance by some of these thugs.
When we left Brackenreid for dead at the end of season 7, the fans weren't happy.
You see Brackenreid looking a bit unsure of himself and a bit like, not a coward, but he's just questioning where he fits in the modern world with policing.
We have the suffrage movement that is taking hold with some of our central characters.
You do agree that women are deserving of the right to vote? Of course. I intend to see that women's suffrage is achieved in my lifetime. And I can't do that without people like you at my side.
The suffragette movement is something that I think Ogden's really excited about. As soon as she gets involved, slightly tentative at first, but once she has all of the information, she actually takes charge. So it's fun. I've been saying for years to the writers, when are we going to have the suffragettes on? So yeah, I'm super excited.
We're trying to address both social and technological change a little bit without losing the charm of it being an old-time period show. Murdoch is probably not as morally rigid as he was 7 years ago. That's partially because of the society he's around, but it's partially because he's been a cop for 8 years. So we've just tried to let the characters adapt slowly, I think, as normal human beings.
It's just virtually impossible to actually shoot the waterfront in Toronto. There's just too much there that's modern. At the moment, we're actually at 270 Sherman in Hamilton, one of our favorite places.
The building was originally built in 1900. It was built as the Imperial Cotton Company, and everybody remembers that. Hamilton is a steel town, and what they forget is the second industry in Hamilton was the fabric industry. And this would have been the center of the industrial area of Hamilton at the time that the Murdoch Mysteries occurred, which is to say around about 1900.
The architecture of Sherman, the red brick that you can see around you is very typical of industrial Toronto. So even if it was the dockyards, they would probably look like this.
Socially, the Toronto Harbour was a fascinating place. As you moved away from Yonge Street towards the east end of the harbour, things got more and more interesting in terms of a really rough and tumble environment. And all these independent entrepreneurs coming up against some of these great big shipyard owners and the coal merchants, everyone trying to make a buck off the waterfront, no one cooperating.
What we are asking for is not scandalous. Although there are some who think our very presence here is shocking.
If you're going to talk about Murdoch Mysteries and you want to revolve around the turn of the 20th century, you're going to end up at Queen's Park because a lot of key important decisions were made right here.
This is a remarkable complex within the City of Toronto, the Legislative Assembly building. It was opened in 1893. At the time this episode is being shot, this building would have only been not even 10 years old, and would have been a major architectural icon of the city at the time.
Mr. Foster, I'm Margaret Hale. Could we have a word, please?
Of course, ladies. To what do I owe the pleasure?
Margaret Hale, she really existed, and she was the first woman to ever run for Ontario Parliament. And this was 15 years before women had the right to vote in Ontario. It was quite an accomplishment even to have gotten that far.
Women did come and present petitions. Of course, they couldn't enter the legislature per se, except in the visitors gallery. So usually they ask one of the male legislators to introduce their petitions on the floor of the House.
It's super important to talk about every aspect of the history that people don't know a lot about in Canada, but this one is pretty close to my heart. I think that a lot of young people now, they skim over it in history and then that's the end of it.
I knew very, very little, but I find Murdoch is part of my education. I learned so much from the scripts, and I always find it so impressive, all the research that the writers do and how accurate it is, and we get to depict all these moments in history and Canadian history that are so awesome.
I think it's very important for people today to know that the vote was not just given. In fact, it came as a result of several decades of very hard work and sacrifice on the part of many women and men in order for women to get this most basic right of citizenship.
My daughter, she was here during the provincial election, and I told her, okay, we're going at this time of the day, we're going to vote. She said, I don't really feel like voting. I said, what? You have to vote. You have no idea what women went through in order for you to be able to vote. So she voted.
One of the two big sequences in this episode is this huge fight scene where the constables come down to the dockyards and face off with the dockers. George?
Let's stand aside.
When I first read the script, I did think, oh my God, because that's a huge thing to do and we're always pressed for time. It's actually something I storyboarded and shot listed and refined and refined and refined. And a big part of that, of course, is our stunts coordinator, Darren Marsman. He's great at getting actors and stunt people comfortable with all those beats, and it ends up looking really real.
It's kind of funny because the cops are sort of normal-sized guys, but all the people they brought in to be the dock workers are these like 6-7 foot giant burly guys. Yannick squares off with a guy who's like 7'2". It's hilarious.
It's fun to get a bit of physical. It's the stuff that you grow up wanting to be in showbiz for.